Welcome to IQ Matrix TV, the home of hundreds of life-altering mind maps. This is Adam, and in today's video, we're going to discuss how to influence people. And the type of influence we are going to be exploring is the very subtle form of influence, an influence where others may not even know that they are being influenced by you. So in this video, we're just going to do an overview of this topic. Specifically, we're going to look at 4 key areas of influence. We're going to look at how to use teaching as an influential tool, how to challenge people to influence them, how we can establish influence as a leader, and how we can activate people's desires to help them to make certain decisions or take actions and go through with certain things that we are requesting. So this video is just going to be a quick brief tour of the map, and I'm going to overview each of these branches. If you want a detailed breakdown of each branch, then please have a look at the other videos in this series. The first key to influence is teaching. This is one of the fundamental principles to influence. It's one of the principles that helps us to gain trust, which is number 1, and then respect. When we can use teaching as a form of influence, we gain people's trust and respect. And as we gain their trust and respect, that is when we have a greater degree of influence over their decisions, choices, and actions. So what do I mean by teaching? When it comes to teaching, this is all about inspiration. We need to be able to inspire people to be their best selves and to do the best they can in every situation. And specifically, we want to use stories, metaphors, analogies, and parables in order to influence them and inspire them through these methods. Specifically, we want to be able to share our personal experiences. We want to share stories of personal mistakes and failures they can relate to and that they can use in their own lives, that they can take away these lessons to become better versions of themselves. That is essentially the key. And one of the fundamental principles that we're looking at when it comes to storytelling and sharing our experiences comes down to transforming people's perspective. Their perspective and how they interpret the world around them. So how they interpret their circumstances, how they maybe perceive themselves in certain situations, and how they experience their understanding of reality. We essentially need to transform how people think about something. That's essentially what teaching is. But we need to come from the perspective of inspiration. And inspiration is incredibly important here because inspiration is the key, like we mentioned before, to building trust and respect. If we can inspire people through the stories, through our own experiences, that can help us to build that trust, respect we need, and then everything else that we talk about within this map will become much easier. But we first need to establish that trust and respect. Effectively, what we want to do, our main objective, is to inspire people to think about their circumstances, themselves, their problems, their life in empowering, helpful, and optimal ways. So we need to be able to use stories. And if they're not stories from personal experience because we don't have those stories to share, then we can share stories from other people's experiences, share stories from books, share other people's, failures, mistakes, and anything that we can use to help people understand valuable lessons that they can take away and then apply in their life. So right here, experiences, and stories. These are the key fundamentals, and we need to use that to inspire people. So that's basically a nice sort of outline of what this branch is about. We will of course break down this branch in the detailed video in much more detail. We'll go through all these little things. As you zoom in, you see all these other little details, and that we'll explore that in further detail to help us to get a thorough understanding of this topic. The second key to influencing people comes down to challenging people. We need to be able to challenge people in a multitude of ways to help them to become their best selves and to make the best of every situation. You must, however, first teach. We must teach and inspire, right? Inspire through teaching. So we must first be able to address this because this helps us to build trust and respect. If we skip over the actual part of teaching, then challenging becomes a lot more difficult. And you're not going to have as much influence over people if you start challenging them straight away without first teaching and inspiring them to take certain actions in their life that can help improve their life. However, when it comes to challenging people, let's have a look at what we can do, how we can sort of break this down, and how we can develop a level of influence to help us to guide people's decisions and actions in an optimal way. First of all, I want you to identify different aspects of your life where you can challenge people. For instance, whether it's your kids at home, whether it's at work, your colleagues, whether it's your friends, you want to challenge them, whether you're a coach and you want to challenge your players, whether you're at school, you're a captain, a school captain, or whatever it is. And think about how you can challenge them in the following ways. How could you challenge people to build nurturing, self-supporting relationships? How can you challenge people to build potentially empowering habits and rituals? How can you challenge people to demonstrate impeccable character in a variety of different situations? How can you challenge people to raise their standards of performance and their expectations of what they feel is possible? How can you challenge people to learn from their failures, from their mistakes, and from setbacks? And how can you challenge people to become better versions of themselves in a variety of different situations? What we have here is essentially a blueprint of the things that we need to be able to focus on in order to influence people. Now, what I'll do is I'll highlight some of these areas. So, first of all, nurturing relationships. If we can challenge people in a variety of different situations, whether that's at home, whether that's at school, whether that's at work, whatever that is, if we can challenge them to build nurturing relationships, we can challenge them to build empowering habits and rituals, to demonstrate impeccable character in different tricky sort of situations, to raise their standards of performance, to learn from failures, mistakes, and setbacks, and essentially to become better versions of themselves. That's when we start to gain a high degree of influence. But we need to understand how to challenge people in the right way. And then there's obviously some questions that we can ask ourselves that can help us to challenge people. For instance, how can I challenge people? We approach it from that sort of perspective. How can I challenge this person to perform better in this sort of situation, to see themselves in a better light in this situation? Or what value will they gain? And that's another great question to ask because, again, this comes down to benefits. People need to see the value, and we covered this also in the teaching side of things, right? People need to see the benefits of the lessons we're teaching them. Here, they need to see the benefit of how we are challenging and how that challenge will help them to become better versions of themselves or help them to make the best of the situation that they're dealing with. So that's essentially your blueprint for challenging people in empowering ways. And that's something that we'll explore in further detail in another video. The third aspect of influence comes down to leadership. And this is all about being an inspiring role model, someone who others will follow. When it comes to leadership and influence, the key, however, is it's all about empowerment. It's all about empowering people to be their best selves and to make the best of a situation. But the underlying principle behind leadership, the core area that you need to cover, that you need to address, is your vision. You need to have a compelling vision of a future. Every leader needs to have a compelling vision of the future. If you do not have a compelling vision, some kind of goal, some kind of target, outcome that you can gather your team or get your team behind, then that's not leadership. Leadership needs that vision because then everything builds around that vision. And that's how you start to gain more influence over those people who actually are supporting that vision. So, as a leader, you need to be enthusiastic and joyful about that vision. You need to infuse that vision into every single person who follows you. That's the way you start to gain influence. To become an influential leader, you also need to address a few key areas. Specifically, we need to trust people's judgment. So you need to allow people to make their own decisions, to work through things at their own pace, and you need to be able to trust that they will make the right call in certain situations. If we focus on micromanaging too much, that's when you start to lose respect. That's when you start to lose people's trust. And all these things here, and I'll just zoom out a little bit. And we'll talk about these just a little bit. So all these things here, the trusting people's judgment, being authentic, being vulnerable, being encouraging, and being an inspiring example. All this comes to developing more trust, respect, and admiration. When we address all these areas, for instance, we come across as being authentic as a leader, this creates trust, respect, and deeper levels of admiration. When we come across as being more vulnerable, again, that brings people closer to us, helps us to bond with people at a deeper level. When we're encouraging and we support people, that again addresses the level of trust, respect, and admiration. And here, being an inspiring example, again, that comes back to trust, respect, and admiration. So if you cover all these areas, what I'll do is just get rid of that. So if you cover all these areas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you cover all these areas. You address the idea of allowing people and trusting their judgment, being authentic, being vulnerable, being encouraging, and being an inspiring example and role model for people to follow. That's when you start to gain a deeper level of influence, because the more trust, respect, and admiration you have from the people that you lead, the more influence you have over their lives. And then, therefore, the more influence you have to direct their choices, decisions, behaviors, and actions towards that compelling vision of the future that can be accomplished by everyone working towards that vision. But there is this one final thing that you also need to address, and that is equipping people with adequate knowledge, skills, and tools. You have this vision of the future, but if you do not equip people with the right knowledge, skills, and tools to accomplish that vision, you don't provide them with the adequate support they need, then people will not have the confidence to get the job done. And if they don't have the confidence, so say no confidence, then they'll lack the competence. No competence. Competence. And if they have no competence, they'll have no confidence. If they have no confidence, they'll have no competence, and nothing will get achieved. So we need to raise people's level of competence, and therefore their level of confidence goes up as well. And then as their level of confidence goes up, their level of competence goes up. So this is definitely something that you need to be able to address, and we'll provide more information about this in the detailed breakdown of this branch. And then there are a few questions that you'll want to go through and ask yourself to help you apply these ideas into your life. Specifically, you want to look at questions that help you to address trust, respect, and leading by example. And we'll talk about this. We'll talk about the different areas on how you can develop more trust with people, how you can develop more respect with people. And also another area here is collaboration. So you want to be able to bring people together working towards a common goal, a common vision, and you want to get them excited. So we've kind of already covered that area, but we'll break this down in further detail in the detailed breakdown of this map in another video. We have the aspect of teaching, we have the aspect of challenging, and we have the aspect of leadership. We, of course, need to target or cover or I guess master this first area of teaching. So this comes through inspiration. Then we need to work on expanding that and turning it into challenges. So in the first instance here, when it comes to teaching, you are providing people with inspiration. So you're providing them with life lessons that they can take away. In the second section here, you are challenging people. So this is kind of another level where you're really challenging people to become their best selves. So it's not only sharing life lessons, you actually challenge them to be better in certain situations and to make the best of certain situations. And then when it comes to leadership, we still need to be challenging people. We still need to be teaching and inspiring people. But here we also need to address other areas. Other areas, your vision, authentic, vulnerable, encouraging. We need to equip people with right, adequate knowledge, skills, and tools, trust in their judgment. We need to be able to empower people. This is the key to leadership. If you do not cover all these areas, then you're not going to become an influential leader. So there's not a lot here, but if we break it down in further detail, you'll see that there's a lot to work on. A lot to work on and a lot to master. The final aspect to leadership comes down to activating people's desires. We need to be able to understand what motivates people. So these are effectively motivation tools. We are all motivated in certain ways, in certain common ways that we share as a human species. Specifically, we are motivated in 7 key ways. We are motivated by change, contribution, congruence, connection, control, competence, and creative self-expression. To have influence over other people, and I guess specifically when you're making a request for someone to do something, if you can address more of these areas, then the more likely that person is to actually go through with what you're requesting them to do. If you don't address any of these areas and you're asking someone to do something, then if they do end up doing what you're asking them, then maybe they'll be reluctant to do it or they might not do a great job. The more of these human desires we can actually trigger in any request we make, the greater level of influence you have over that person's decisions, choices, and actions. So we're not going to break these down in any further detail in this video. We'll do it in another video. So what we'll do is we'll just finish off just with some questions that some of these questions connect to some of these human desires that people have. And they'll help you to give you some kind of a rough idea of what you need to do and how you can start implementing these ideas in your life starting today. So first question is, how can you generate interest? So this comes down to the desire for change. People need change, need variety. So you need to be able to generate interest to help people become interested in what you're asking them to do. Secondly, how can I give people more control? So this is where people desire to have control. So you need to allow them to make decisions on their own in certain aspects of what they're doing. And then we have, how can we give people creative freedom, which is kind of an extension of control. People always desire to have creative freedom to express their creativity. And that's what we want to give them. We want to give them that space they need to express their creative potential so they can become their best selves and express who they really are in every single task that they do. Now the question is, how can I help people feel more confident? And this comes back to skills, knowledge, and tools, right? This comes back to this one here. So this is about helping them to develop the confidence they need to become more competent. And as their confidence rises, their competence rises. As their competence rises, their confidence rises. We've discussed that already, so I guess you probably know what I'm getting at. So here, knowledge. I'll just finish this off so we get the full word. Okay, knowledge, skills, and tools. We need to be able to provide people so that they can get their job done. And then the final question here is, how can I demonstrate that I care? And this is probably one of the most important questions in the whole map, because if we do not cover a lot of other areas that we sort of walk through in this map, but all we focus on is, how can I demonstrate that I care? How can I become genuinely interested in other people? How can I create deeper emotional bonds with other people? That pretty much covers a lot of different areas. And just by doing that, just by demonstrating that we care, that we want to develop a deeper level of interest, we want to get to know people at a deeper level, especially emotional level, that itself just creates a deeper level of influence. And if we can have that, then we create deeper levels of trust and respect, which in turn helps us to build our influence. And that's it. So I hope that you found that of value. I'll go through the main ideas again, just to sort of recap where we sort of started and how we've sort of progressed. So we started off with teaching, and teaching obviously comes through inspiration. We need to be able to inspire people in certain ways, teach them key life lessons from our personal experiences, help them to be their best selves and make the best of situations. Once you've done a great job with that, you can then move on to challenging people, because here you've established the trust, the respect, and now you can challenge them to be their best selves and make the best of situations. So it's kind of like a different approach when you're challenging people from inspiring people. Inspiring is kind of you're not so much hands-on, but when you're challenging people, you're helping them through certain situations. So it's a lot more involving. We definitely need to address that only once we've covered the first point, which is challenge, which is sort of teaching. And then we can move to challenging. And then after that, if you're in a leadership position, and you don't have to be identified as a leader, you can still take a leadership position and you can start applying some of these areas. You might not maybe have a vision of the future if you're not in a leadership position, but you can be authentic, you can be vulnerable, you can be encouraging, you can be an inspiring example, and you can even help people, equip them with adequate knowledge, skills, and tools to accomplish certain goals and objectives. That helps you to gain a deeper level of trust, respect, and admiration from people. And in the final branch, we talked about how to activate people's desires. And the more of these desires you can activate when you're making a request for someone to do something, the greater level of influence you will have, because the more willing people will be able to do those things. And in the main videos where we break down each branch in much more detail, we'll discuss this. We'll talk about the nitty-gritty of all the different things that we can do in each of these branches to help you become a more influential person. And this is a very subtle form of influence. I hope you're seeing that when people are teaching you, inspiring you through life lessons, through stories, through personal experiences, it's not a forced form of influence. It's a very subtle form of influence that we don't even see coming. When people challenge you to do certain things, to be a certain way, in this specific way that we discussed in this branch, that's again a very subtle form of influence. Being authentic, vulnerable, encouraging, inspiring example, setting an inspiring example, providing people adequate knowledge, skills, again, a very subtle form of influence. And activating these human desires, again, a very subtle form of influence. So by studying this topic, by studying this map, you will gain a deep understanding of what it takes to influence a person at a deep core level. This will, of course, take time. You will need to work through this progressively. And I hope that the other videos in this series will help you to do just that, to gain all the nitty-gritty insights that can help you to become a more influential person in any aspect of your life. I hope that you found this video of value. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, then click on the bell icon to receive notifications, and I will continue to provide you with different sort of videos that help us to explore different aspects of life, to help us to be our best selves and to make the best of every single situation. If you want to check out the map, download this map. There are different versions of this map, ones that sort of come with some text layers and not other text layers, and then I've got a version that has all these text layers so you can see and gain a vast array of insights into this topic in a number of different ways. And then there's also an article on the IQ Matrix blog where I summarize this map and I break it down in detail. Definitely check that out. I hope you found it of value, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching.